I should probably start by saying I never believed in cave stories. Not the real ones, anyway. I believed in accidents. I believed in people getting lost because they ignored a sign, or because their flashlight died, or because they thought they were smarter than the guide. I believed in loose rocks, sudden drops, bad air, underground flooding, and panic. Those things were real. Those things could kill you without needing ghosts, monsters, curses, or whatever else people whispered about in the dark. But after working at Briar Hollow Caverns for 2 weeks, I stopped laughing at the whispers. And after my first night tour, I stopped thinking the rules were stupid. Briar Hollow Caverns sits about 40 minutes outside a small town in southern Kentucky, down a 2-lane road that seems to shrink the deeper you drive into the hills. The place is easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for. There's an old wooden sign at the turnoff with chipped white letters, a gravel parking lot, a ticket office that looks like a converted ranger station, and a gift shop that sells the usual tourist junk. Polished stones, plastic helmets, glow-in-the-dark bats, postcards, and shirts that say, "I survived Briar Hollow." I used to think that was just a cheesy slogan. Now I think it's a warning. I got the job because I needed money and because I had experience talking to people. I'd done seasonal work before, summer camps, a historical walking tour in Louisville, even one miserable month at a haunted corn maze where I had to wear a burlap mask and scream at teenagers. So when I saw the listing for Cavern Tour Guide, full-time training provided, I applied without thinking too much about it. The pay was better than I expected. Too good, honestly. That should have been the first red flag. The interview was with a man named Earl Maddox, the owner and manager of Briar Hollow Caverns. Earl was in his late 60s, maybe early 70s, but he had the posture of someone who had spent his whole life refusing to bend. He was tall, thin, and pale, with silver hair combed neatly back and hands that looked too large for the rest of him. His eyes were a washed-out blue, the kind that looked friendly until you noticed they didn't blink much. He asked me normal interview questions at first. Had I ever led groups before? Was I comfortable speaking in front of strangers? Could I stay calm during emergencies? Was I claustrophobic? Did I have any medical conditions that would prevent me from walking long distances underground? I answered everything the way you're supposed to answer in an interview. Confident, polite, slightly desperate. Then Earl leaned back in his chair, folded his hands over his stomach, and asked, "Do you follow instructions well?" I laughed a little because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh with me. So I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He stared at me for a few seconds too long. Then he said, "Good. Because down there, instructions are not suggestions." I remember thinking he was just trying to scare me. You know, the gruff old boss routine. The whole, "this job is serious business" speech. So I nodded and said, "Understood." That was apparently enough, because he hired me on the spot. My training started the next morning. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. The caverns were beautiful. I mean, really beautiful. Even now, after everything, I can admit that. The public tour route runs through about 1.5 miles of mapped passage, with metal railings, stone steps, safety lights, and wooden platforms built over the uneven ground. The cave walls look wet even when they aren't. Mineral streaks run down them like melted wax. Stalactites hang from the ceiling in long, crooked teeth. Stalagmites rise from the floor like frozen fountains. In some rooms, the ceiling opens up so high above you that your flashlight can barely touch it. The main tour stops had names like Cathedral Chamber, Bridal Veil Falls, the Organ Room, and the Devil's Pantry. Tourists loved those names. They loved hearing that the cave had been used by moonshiners, Civil War deserters, and local families hiding during storms. They loved the story about the singing rocks, where dripping water echoed in a way that sounded like distant humming. They did not love the dark. Nobody does, not really. At the end of every tour, guides turned off the lights for about 30 seconds to show visitors true cave darkness. It was one of those things every cavern tour does. People always laughed at first, then went silent when the darkness settled. It wasn't like being in a dark room. It was thicker than that, complete, heavy, the kind of dark that presses against your eyes until your brain starts inventing shapes just to cope. Then the lights came back on. Everyone laughed nervously, and we finished the tour. Simple, safe, controlled. That was what I believed during my first week. The other employees were friendly enough, though they all had that small-town habit of watching new people carefully before deciding how much to say. There was Rhonda, who ran the gift shop and had worked there since the 80s. There was Calvin, the maintenance guy, who barely spoke but seemed to know every pipe, wire, and loose screw in the place. There were two other guides, Jamie and Luis, both part-time college students who mostly worked weekends. And then there was Marcy. Marcy was the senior guide. She had been there for 12 years, which felt insane to me. She was maybe 35, with dark hair always tied back in a braid, a dry sense of humor, and the permanent tired expression of someone who had seen too many people do stupid things. She trained me on the route, the history, the safety procedures, and the little jokes guides use to keep children from getting restless. She was the one who first told me not to whistle underground. I thought she was messing with me. We were walking through a narrow section called Needle Pass, where the ceiling dipped low and the walls squeezed close enough that larger visitors had to turn sideways. I was trying to remember the exact wording of the speech about limestone erosion when I whistled without thinking. Just a few notes, nothing special. Marcy stopped so suddenly I almost walked into her. "Don't do that," she said. I blinked. "Do what?" "Whistle." "In the cave?" "Anywhere past the gate." I smiled, waiting for the punchline. She didn't smile back. "Sound carries weird down here," she said. "It confuses people." "Right," I said. "Echoes." She stared at me. "Sure, echoes." That was all she said. I should have asked more questions. I didn't, because at that point, I still thought Briar Hollow was just a cave with a few superstitious employees. Then Earl called me into his office at the end of my second Friday. The office sat behind the ticket counter, cramped and dim, with filing cabinets along one wall and old framed photographs along the other. Most showed tour groups from different decades standing at the cave entrance with helmets and lanterns. The older photos were black and white, men in suspenders, women in long dresses, children holding candles. One photo caught my attention every time I walked in. It showed a group from maybe the 1940s, all gathered in front of the cave mouth. Everyone faced the camera except for one person in the back, a little boy, maybe 10 years old, turned completely around and staring into the entrance. I don't know why that picture bothered me. It just did. Earl was sitting at his desk with a manila folder in front of him. "Close the door," he said. I did. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." I sat. For a few seconds, he didn't speak. He just looked at me like he was deciding whether I had disappointed him yet. Then he said, Marcy tells me you've picked up the route quickly. I think so, I said, still working on some of the history sections. That matters less than you think. I wasn't sure how to answer that, so I didn't. Earl opened the folder and pulled out a laminated sheet of paper. It was old, yellowed around the edges despite the plastic, and covered in typed rules. Some lines had been underlined by hand. Others had notes scribbled in the margins. He slid it across the desk. You'll be leading your first late tour tomorrow night. I looked down at the sheet. Late tour? 8:30. I thought the last tour was at 6. For regular visitors, yes. I looked back up at him. So, what's the 8:30 tour? Earl's mouth tightened. Private groups, researchers, local history clubs, people who pay extra. That sounded reasonable, but the way he said it made my stomach tighten. He tapped the laminated sheet with one long finger. You will read these tonight. You will memorize them before tomorrow. You will carry this copy in your pocket during the tour. You will not show it to guests. I almost laughed again. Almost. But I remembered the interview, the way he had asked whether I followed instructions. So I looked down and read the title at the top. Briar Hollow Late Tour. Rules for guide use only. There were 13 rules. Of course there were. I read the first few quickly, expecting normal safety stuff. They were not normal. Rule 1. Count the guests before entering. Count them again after the iron gate. If the number changes, end the tour immediately. Rule 2. Do not begin the tour if any guest refuses to give their name. Rule 3. If a guest asks about the lower path, say there is no lower path. Rule 4. Do not whistle, hum, sing, or allow guests to do so after entering Needle Pass. Rule 5. In Cathedral Chamber, do not let anyone stand in the far left corner for longer than 10 seconds. Rule 6. If you hear a child laughing, ask the group to remain silent. Do not look for the child. Rule 7. The lanterns in the Devil's Pantry are decorative. If one is lit, turn the group around. Rule 8. During the darkness demonstration, keep your eyes closed. Rule 9. If someone in the group speaks with your voice, do not respond. Rule 10. Never take the tour past the chain marked Staff Only, even if the lights are on beyond it. Rule 11. If a guest disappears, do not say their name underground. Rule 12. If the group sees water running uphill, leave by the emergency passage and do not look back. Rule 13. The tour must return before 10:13 p.m. If you are still underground at 10:13, do not unlock the iron gate until morning. I read the list twice. Then I looked at Earl. He waited. I said, "Is this a joke?" "No." I gave a small, awkward laugh. "Because this feels like something you give new employees to mess with them." His face didn't change. "It isn't." The office suddenly felt too warm. "Some of these don't make sense," I said. "They don't need to make sense. They need to be followed." "What happens if I don't?" Earl leaned back in his chair. The old wood creaked under him. "People get hurt." That answer was too simple, too calm. "What kind of hurt?" He looked at the photo wall, not at me. "Different kinds." I wanted to quit right there. I really did. But then I thought about rent. I thought about my car payment. I thought about how hard it had been to find stable work. And I thought about how ridiculous I'd feel telling someone I quit a decent job because my boss gave me a spooky rule sheet. So I forced a smile. "Okay," I said. "I'll memorize them." Earl nodded once. "Good." I stood up to leave, but he spoke again before I reached the door. One more thing. I turned. His expression had changed. Just slightly. The sternness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Fear. If Marcy tells you something different from the rules, follow Marcy. That made no sense, but I said, okay. Then I left. I spent that night reading the rules over and over in my apartment, telling myself it was probably tradition. Some weird local superstition passed down by generations of guides. Maybe the rules were based on real accidents, but exaggerated over time. Maybe "don't look for the child" meant don't let the group scatter if they hear an echo. Maybe water running uphill referred to some optical illusion. I tried to explain every rule logically. Some were easier than others. Don't let people sing or whistle? Fine. Sound disorientation. Don't go past staff-only areas? Obviously. Count the guests? Basic safety. Return before a certain time? Maybe the cave humidity messed with locks or lights after hours. Keep your eyes closed during the darkness demonstration? That one bothered me. So did Rule 9. If someone in the group speaks with your voice, do not respond. There was no normal explanation for that. The next day, I showed up early. The regular tours went fine. Families, retirees, a group of teenagers who kept trying to scare each other. Nothing unusual. By 6:30, the last public group had left. The gift shop was closing, and the parking lot was almost empty. At 7, a fog started rolling in over the hills. It moved low across the gravel, pooling around tires and fence posts. The sunset turned the sky a dirty orange behind the trees. Crickets started up in the grass. Inside the visitor center, Rhonda counted the register while Calvin checked equipment in silence. Marcy found me near the employee lockers. "You got the rules?" she asked. I patted my jacket pocket. "Yeah." "Read them again." "I have." "Read them again anyway." I tried to smile. "You all take this very seriously." She didn't smile back. "You should too." That was the moment I stopped pretending everyone was messing with me. Marcy leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Earl explained the late tours?" "Private groups," I said. "Researchers, local history clubs." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Right. What does that mean?" "It means Earl tells new guides what he thinks they can handle." "And what can I handle?" She looked toward the cave entrance, visible through the front windows. It was a black opening in the hillside, barred by the iron gate. "I guess we'll find out." That did not help. At 8:15, the private group arrived. There were 6 of them, a middle-aged couple named Tom and Elaine Whitaker, 2 younger women, sisters named Paige and Nora Bell, an older man named Dr. Harlan Voss, who introduced himself as a regional folklore researcher, and a quiet woman in a long gray coat who said her name was Ruth. I remember all their names because of Rule 2. Do not begin the tour if any guest refuses to give their name. They all gave names. So, that was fine. Except Ruth. Ruth gave her name, yes, but she did it strangely. When I asked, she looked past me toward the cave entrance and said, "Tonight, Ruth." I frowned. "Sorry?" She looked at me then. Her eyes were dark. Not brown exactly. Dark, like wet stone. "My name is Ruth," she said. I wanted to ask what she meant by tonight, but Dr. Voss interrupted with a laugh. "You'll have to forgive us," he said. "We're all very excited. Briar Hollow has quite the reputation." I glanced at Earl, who stood behind the ticket counter, watching us. "What reputation is that?" I asked. Dr. Voss smiled. "Oh, you know, vanishing workers, sealed passages, voices in the lower chambers. The usual Appalachian nonsense. Earl's face hardened. There are no lower chambers on the tour, he said. Dr. Voss's smile widened. Of course. I felt the laminated rule sheet pressing against my chest from inside my jacket. Rule 3. If a guest asks about the lower path, say there is no lower path. Lower chambers. Lower path. Close enough. I cleared my throat and clapped my hands together like I'd seen Marcy do with regular groups. All right, everyone, before we begin, a few safety reminders. Stay with the group. Do not cross any railings or chains. Watch your footing. The cave floor may be damp. Do not touch formations. They're fragile, and oils from your hands can damage them. And please do not shout, whistle, sing, or wander away. Paige smiled. People sing down there? People do a lot of things they shouldn't, I said. That got a small laugh. Except from Ruth. She still stared at the cave entrance. At 8:30 exactly, I led them outside. The iron gate stood at the mouth of the cavern, tall and black, its bars slick with condensation. During public tours, the gate stayed open. For late tours, Earl unlocked it himself. He handed me the keys. His fingers were cold. Count them, he said quietly. I turned and counted. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, 6, plus me. 6 guests, I said. Earl nodded. Then he unlocked the iron gate. It opened inward with a long metallic groan that echoed from somewhere deep inside. I stepped through first and turned on my headlamp. The entry tunnel sloped downward, lit by yellow safety lights bolted along the wall. The air changed immediately. Outside, it had been humid and warm. Inside, it was cool and mineral-heavy, with that faint underground smell of wet stone, old clay, and something almost metallic. The group followed me in. Earl closed the gate behind us. The sound of the lock snapping shut made my shoulders tense. I turned back and counted again. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, 6. Good. Rule 1 satisfied. I began the tour speech. Welcome to Briar Hollow Caverns. The cave system beneath us began forming millions of years ago as slightly acidic groundwater slowly dissolved the limestone bedrock. What you'll see tonight is only a small section of the mapped passage. My voice sounded steady. That surprised me. We moved through the first tunnel into the welcome chamber, where the ceiling rose and the path widened. The lights hummed softly. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The guests looked around with the usual awe, phones out, heads tilted back. Except Dr. Voss. He watched me, not the cave, me. You're new, he said. I smiled politely. That obvious? You still sound like you memorized the brochure. Tom chuckled. I didn't. Everyone starts somewhere, I said. Dr. Voss took a small notebook from his coat pocket. And what did they tell you about Briar Hollow before letting you lead us down? Enough to get you in and out safely. In and out, he repeated, writing something down. Interesting choice of words. I ignored that and kept walking. The first half of the route went smoothly. We passed Bridal Veil Falls, where a thin sheet of water slid down flowstone in shimmering ribbons. We stopped at the organ room, where I tapped a railing lightly and let the metallic echo ripple through the chamber. I told them about early explorers and local legends. I avoided anything about disappearances. At Needle Pass, I stopped. The tunnel ahead narrowed, the walls squeezing in. The lights there were dimmer, spaced farther apart. I turned to the group. This next section is tight. Single file, please. Watch your shoulders and helmets. And remember, no loud noises in this passage. Nora raised her hand slightly. Why? Sound carries strangely here, I said. It can make it hard for people to hear instructions. That answer came out exactly like Marcy's. Sure. Echoes. We entered Needle Pass. The air felt colder there. I went first, moving sideways through the narrowest section. Behind me, I heard the group shuffling carefully, shoes scraping stone, jackets brushing rock, nervous breathing. Then someone whistled, 3 soft notes. My blood went cold. I stopped. The group bumped to a halt behind me. Who did that? I asked. No one answered. My headlamp lit only the stone ahead. I couldn't turn around fully in the passage. I said no whistling, I said, sharper this time. Tom muttered, Wasn't me. Elaine said, I didn't hear anything. That was worse, because I had heard it clearly, 3 notes close behind me. Then it came again, 3 soft notes, but this time they came from ahead, from deeper in the passage. Everyone heard it then. Paige whispered, What was that? I remembered Rule 4. Do not whistle, hum, sing, or allow guests to do so after entering Needle Pass. Allow guests. But if it wasn't a guest, my mouth had gone dry. We keep moving, I said. Dr. Voss spoke from somewhere near the back. Shouldn't we stop if there's someone ahead? No, I said too quickly. There isn't anyone ahead. The whistle came again, farther away this time, almost playful. I forced myself forward. Needle Pass seemed longer than it had during training. The lights looked dimmer. The walls sweated cold moisture onto my sleeves. By the time we came out into Cathedral Chamber, my shirt was stuck to my back. I turned and counted immediately. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, 6. Still 6. But Ruth was smiling. Just slightly, like she had heard a joke no one else understood. Cathedral Chamber was the largest room on the tour route. The ceiling vanished into darkness above the lights. Stone columns rose from floor to ceiling like melted pillars. The far left corner, the one from Rule 5, was a shallow alcove behind a thick formation called the Bishop's Chair. Do not let anyone stand in the far left corner for longer than 10 seconds. I positioned myself between the group and that corner without making it obvious. This is Cathedral Chamber, I began, named for its size and natural acoustics. Early visitors claimed voices could carry from one side of the room to the other without seeming to pass through the space between. Dr. Voss perked up. Voices? I regretted saying it. Echoes, I said. Of course, he replied. As the group spread out to take pictures, Elaine drifted toward the far left corner. I noticed immediately. She wasn't looking at her phone. She wasn't looking at the formations. She was looking into the alcove. I stepped toward her. Ma'am, please stay with the group. She didn't respond. 5 seconds. The alcove was darker than the rest of the chamber, not unlit exactly, more like the light refused to settle there. Elaine, Tom called. She took another step. 7 seconds. I moved faster. Elaine, I said, louder. You need to step away from there. She tilted her head. 9 seconds. I reached out and grabbed her elbow, pulling her back maybe a little harder than I should have. The moment she crossed away from the alcove, she gasped like she had been underwater. Tom rushed over. What happened? Elaine blinked rapidly. I thought... She looked embarrassed. I thought someone was standing there. Nora lowered her phone. Where? Elaine pointed at the alcove. In the corner, a little boy. Nobody spoke. My eyes went to the old photograph in Earl's office. The boy turned towards the cave entrance. I swallowed. "There are no children on this tour," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the chamber. Elaine rubbed her arm where I'd grabbed her. "I know what I saw." "We need to continue," I said. Dr. Voss was writing quickly in his notebook now. That made me angry, not scared. Angry, because something was wrong, and he seemed delighted. We moved on. The next stop was the Devil's Pantry. I hated that name even before the late tour. It was a cramped, uneven chamber full of strange rock shelves and bulbous formations that looked too much like stacked bones in the wrong light. Years ago, someone had placed old lanterns along one wall for atmosphere. They weren't functional anymore. No fuel, no wicks, just props for the tour. Rule 7. The lanterns in the Devil's Pantry are decorative. If one is lit, turn the group around. As we approached, I smelled smoke. Not strong, just a faint trace, like a match blown out in a closed room. I stopped so suddenly that Paige almost walked into me. "What's wrong?" she asked. I didn't answer. I stepped into the Devil's Pantry and looked toward the lantern wall. There were 5 lanterns. 4 were dark. One was burning. A small orange flame flickered behind dusty glass. My heart began to pound. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then Dr. Voss whispered, "Remarkable." I turned around. "We're going back." The group reacted all at once. "What? Already? Is there a problem?" I kept my voice firm. "There's an issue with the route. We need to return to the entrance." Dr. Voss stepped around me, trying to see the lantern better. I blocked him. "Sir, stay with the group." He smiled at me, but there was something ugly under it. "You've been told to turn back if the lantern is lit." The others went quiet. I stared at him. "What did you say?" He closed his notebook. I said, "I assume that means something to you." I felt the laminated rule sheet in my pocket, like it had suddenly grown hot. "How do you know about that?" Dr. Voss didn't answer. Behind him, Ruth turned her head toward the darker tunnel beyond the chamber. Then she whispered, "It's early." I looked at her. "What?" She smiled, not at me, but at the darkness. "It's early for the lantern." That was enough. "We're leaving," I said. This time, I didn't care how scared I sounded. I moved the group back the way we had come, faster than before. Tom helped Elaine, who still seemed shaken. Paige and Nora whispered to each other. Dr. Voss followed calmly, far too calmly. Ruth walked last. I counted them every few minutes. 6. Still 6. When we reached Cathedral Chamber again, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. No one had to ask if that was normal. They knew by my face it wasn't. We crossed the chamber quickly. I kept my eyes away from the far left corner. That was when I heard the child laugh. Small, bright, close, like a little boy giggling behind his hands. The whole group froze. Rule 6. If you hear a child laughing, ask the group to remain silent. Do not look for the child. "Everyone stay quiet," I whispered. Tom opened his mouth. I lifted a hand sharply. "No talking." The laugh came again, this time from above us. Elaine began to cry silently. Paige grabbed Nora's hand. Dr. Voss slowly looked upward. "Don't," I hissed. He ignored me. He tilted his head back toward the black ceiling. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Dr. Voss smiled. "There you are," he whispered. Something shifted high above us. A pebble dropped from the darkness and struck the floor between his shoes. Then another. Then another. Not a cave-in. Not random. The stones fell one at a time in a neat little circle around him. Like something above was marking where he stood. Dr. Voss stopped smiling. "Move," I said. He did. The moment he stepped away, a rock the size of a brick slammed into the exact spot where his head had been. Elaine screamed. The scream tore through Cathedral Chamber and echoed back wrong. Not repeated. Answered. A dozen faint voices screamed back from the tunnels around us. Some sounded like Elaine. Some sounded like people I had never heard before. One sounded like me. "Move!" I shouted. That broke whatever spell had held them. We ran. We pushed through Needle Pass too fast, scraping elbows and shoulders against stone. I kept telling them not to panic while barely controlling my own breathing. Halfway through, Nora started sobbing that someone was behind her. Ruth said calmly, "No, someone is in front of us." I didn't look. I kept moving. The whistle started again, 3 notes. This time, the group heard it from both directions, ahead and behind, then beside us, inside the wall. By the time we stumbled out of Needle Pass and back into the welcome chamber, everyone was breathing hard. The iron gate was visible at the far end of the entry tunnel. Beyond it, through the bars, I could see the faint lights of the visitor center. I almost cried from relief. Almost. Then I counted. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth. 6. I counted again. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth. 6. But there was a problem. A 7th person stood behind them. At first, I thought my brain was misfiring from fear. The figure was half hidden near the edge of the tunnel, just beyond the last safety light. Small, still, low to the ground, a child. A little boy in old-fashioned clothes, soaked from head to toe, his wet hair plastered to his forehead. He was looking at me. No one else seemed to notice him. I remembered Rule 11. If a guest disappears, do not say their name underground. But no guest had disappeared. So, what was the rule for someone appearing? The boy lifted one pale hand and pointed toward the iron gate. Then he shook his head, slowly. No. My hand tightened around the keys. We were so close. I could see Earl standing beyond the gate. He was watching me. His face was white. I hurried everyone forward. The boy stayed where he was, pointing at the gate and shaking his head. No. 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 I reached the iron gate and shoved the key into the lock. It didn't turn. My hands were shaking too badly. "Come on," Tom snapped. "Open it. I'm trying." The key finally turned. The lock clicked. I pulled the gate open. Cool night air rushed in. One by one, the guests stumbled out. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, 6. I stepped through after them and slammed the gate shut. Earl locked it immediately from the outside. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Elaine collapsed onto a bench and started sobbing. Paige kept saying, "What the hell was that? What the hell was that?" Nora hugged herself and stared at the ground. Tom shouted at Earl, demanding answers. Dr. Voss stood apart from everyone, face pale, notebook clutched to his chest. Ruth looked back through the iron gate. She raised one hand in a small wave. Not goodbye. More like, see you later. Earl grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the group. "What happened?" he asked. "The lantern was lit," I said. His grip tightened. "What else?" "We heard the child." His jaw clenched. "What else?" "There was..." I stopped. The boy was still visible through the bars, standing just inside the cave mouth. He looked at me. Then he looked at Earl. Earl saw him. I know he did, because all the color drained from his face. The boy raised one finger to his lips. Shh. Then the lights inside the entry tunnel went out, all of them at once. The cave entrance became a solid black mouth behind the gate. Earl let go of my arm. "What time is it?" he whispered. I checked my phone. The screen read 10:12 p.m., 1 minute before Rule 13. The tour must return before 10:13 p.m. If you are still underground at 10:13, do not unlock the iron gate until morning. I let out a shaky breath. "We made it," I said. Earl didn't answer. He was looking past me, at the parking lot. I turned. There were 7 guests standing in the fog. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, and a little boy dripping wet holding Ruth's hand. That was when Earl whispered the one thing I never wanted to hear. "Count them again. Count them again." That was what Earl whispered. Not shouted, not ordered, whispered. And somehow that made it worse. Because Earl Maddox was not the kind of man who whispered when he was angry. He barked. He snapped. He stared until people did what he wanted. But now he was standing beside me in the foggy gravel parking lot, one hand still gripping the iron gate key, staring at the group like he was afraid one wrong sound might make the whole night collapse around us. I turned back toward the visitors. Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, Dr. Voss, Ruth, and the boy. He stood beside Ruth in the mist, holding her hand like they belonged together. He was small, maybe 10 years old, with pale skin, dark wet hair stuck flat to his forehead, and clothes that looked like they belonged in an old photograph. A white shirt, dark suspenders, brown trousers cut too short at the ankle, no shoes. Water dripped from him onto the gravel, not a lot, just enough to make a dark spot beneath his feet. The others did not seem to see him. Tom was still yelling at Earl. Elaine was still crying on the bench. Paige and Nora were huddled together near the gift shop door. Dr. Voss had gone silent, his eyes moving around the parking lot like he was searching for something he had almost found. But Ruth saw the boy. Earl saw him. And I saw him. I counted again in my head. 6 guests. 1 guide. 1 extra. My mouth had gone dry. 7, I whispered. Earl flinched like I had slapped him. "Not out loud," he said. The boy looked at me. His expression did not change, but the fog around his feet seemed to thicken. "I didn't say his name," I said. "You don't have to." That made no sense, and I was about to say so, but Ruth suddenly turned her head toward us. Her smile was soft and patient, like she had been waiting for children to catch up. "He came through because you opened the gate," she said. Earl's face tightened. "You need to leave." Ruth looked amused. "I paid for the tour. It's over. For tonight." The way she said that made my stomach twist. The boy's small hand tightened around Ruth's fingers. She looked down at him, then back at Earl. "He's cold," she said. Nobody moved. Then Elaine suddenly looked up from the bench. "Who's cold?" Everyone went still. Ruth blinked, and for the first time, I saw something like irritation cross her face. Earl stepped forward quickly. "Nothing, Mrs. Whitaker. You've had a fright. Go inside. Rhonda will get you some water." Tom snapped. "A fright? A rock almost killed that man. My wife saw a child in the cave. We heard voices. You locked us in there." "You were never locked in," Earl said. "You closed the gate behind us." "For safety." "For safety?" Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm calling the police." He pulled out his phone. So did Paige. So did Nora. All 3 screens were black. Tom tapped his phone with his thumb. Paige shook hers. Nora tried holding down the power button. Nothing. Dr. Voss slowly lifted his own phone and looked at it. Dead. The only phone that still worked was mine. I knew that before I even checked it. I don't know how I knew. I pulled it out and saw the screen glowing in my hand. 10:14 p.m. No signal, but it was on. Earl noticed. "Put that away," he said. I did, not because I trusted him, because the boy was staring at it. Ruth let go of the boy's hand. He did not move. Then she stepped toward Dr. Voss. "You found what you came for," she said. Dr. Voss looked at her with a sharpness that told me they knew each other, or at least knew of each other. "I found almost nothing," he said. "You heard the laughing." "That isn't enough. You saw the fall. A rock falling in a cave proves gravity," Ruth smiled. "And yet you're shaking." He was. His hand trembled around the little notebook. He noticed me looking and tucked it into his coat. Earl pointed toward the parking lot exit. "All of you are leaving, now." "What about refunds?" Paige asked, her voice weak and shaky, like she couldn't believe those were the words coming out of her mouth. Rhonda opened the visitor center door behind us. Her face was pale, but her voice stayed calm. "Come inside. I'll get everyone settled." "No," Earl said immediately. "They leave." Rhonda looked at him. Something passed between them. Fear, anger, history. Then Rhonda said, "Earl, they're not driving down that road like this." I said they leave, and I said they're not driving like this. For a moment, I thought Earl might shout at her. Instead, his shoulders sank. It was the first time I saw him look old. Really old. Rhonda brought everyone inside except Ruth, who stayed in the fog with the boy. Dr. Voss hesitated, watching the cave entrance, but eventually followed the others. I should have gone with them. I should have stayed under bright lights, around living people, away from that gate. Instead, I stood outside with Earl, Ruth, and the thing that had followed us out. The iron gate remained shut behind us. Beyond it, the cave entrance was completely dark. No safety lights, no yellow glow from the first tunnel, just blackness behind bars. The boy turned away from Ruth and walked toward the gate. His bare feet made soft, wet sounds on the gravel. Slap, slap, slap. He stopped inches from the bars and looked inside. Then he knocked. 3 times, not on the metal gate, on the darkness. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked back from deep inside the cave. Tap, tap, tap. I stepped back without meaning to. Earl closed his eyes. Ruth whispered, "There it is," Earl snapped. "Enough!" The boy slowly turned his head toward him. Earl did not look away, but I saw how much effort it took. "You don't belong out here," Earl said. The boy's mouth opened. Water spilled out. Not vomit, not spit. Clear water poured over his lips and down his chin, splashing onto his shirt. He tried to speak through it. At first, all I heard was a wet gargle. Then a word formed. Guide. My heart stopped. He was looking at me. Earl grabbed my shoulder. "Do not answer!" The boy's mouth opened wider. "Guide." His voice was not a child's voice anymore. It was my own. The same pitch, the same tone, the same slight rasp I got when I was scared. Rule 9. If someone in the group speaks with your voice, do not respond. But we were not underground anymore. Were we still following the same rules? I didn't know. That was the worst part. The rules only told me what to do inside the cave. Nobody had told me what to do if the cave came outside. The boy took one step toward me. Earl shoved me behind him. "He is not yours," Earl said. Ruth laughed softly. "You know that isn't true." Earl turned on her. "You brought Voss here." I introduced him to a story. He chose to chase it. You knew he'd push. Yes, you knew this could happen. Ruth's smile faded. It always happens eventually. You just keep pretending rules are the same as control. Before Earl could respond, the visitor center door opened again. Marcy stepped out. She wasn't scheduled that night. I knew she wasn't. She had left hours ago. But there she was, walking out of the light with a flashlight in one hand and a heavy canvas bag in the other. She took one look at the boy and said, "Damn it, Earl." He did not argue. That scared me more than anything. Marcy walked straight to me. "Did you say anything to it?" "No." "Did you count it out loud?" I hesitated. Her eyes narrowed. "I said 7, I admitted. Not his name, just 7. She cursed under her breath. Earl said, "He didn't know." "You gave him the late rules and didn't give him the outside rules?" "He wasn't supposed to need them." Marcy laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Nobody is supposed to need them. That's why they exist." The boy watched us, still dripping onto the gravel. Marcy reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a coil of red string, a dented tin lantern, and a small cloth pouch. She shoved the pouch into my hand. "Salt," she said. "Keep it in your pocket." I stared at it. "You're joking." Her expression made it clear she wasn't. "Listen carefully," she said. "For the rest of tonight, do not go anywhere alone. Do not stand with your back to a doorway. Do not look at reflections. If you hear your name from inside the building, ignore it. If you smell river water, find me or Earl immediately. And whatever you do, do not fall asleep before sunrise." I looked at Earl. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "What is happening?" I asked. Marcy glanced at the boy. "He followed your count." "I don't know what that means." "It means you noticed him. You made space for him in the world. Now he's attached to the tour." "To the tour?" "To you, mostly." My whole body went cold. "No," I said. "No, I did exactly what the rules said." "Almost," Earl muttered. I turned on him. "Almost?" He looked tired, but there was no softness in his voice. "You opened the iron gate after he warned you not to." I stared at him. "The boy pointed at the gate," I said. He shook his head. "How was I supposed to know that mattered?" "You were supposed to follow the rules." "The rule said return before 10:13. It was 10:12. "And did it say unlock the gate if something told you not to?" That anger came fast, sharp, hot. "You gave me 13 rules about cave lanterns and fake voices and water running uphill, but you didn't think to mention the dead child who might follow me out?" The boy smiled. "Just a little." Marcy put a hand on my arm. "Don't get loud," she said. "Why?" "Because it likes arguments. Most things down there do." Down there. She said it like the cave was not just a place, but a direction something could come from. The boy turned back toward the iron gate and knocked again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, the response came from inside the visitor center. Tap, tap, tap. All of us turned. Through the front windows, I could see the guests standing in the lobby. Tom and Elaine near the counter, Paige and Nora by the souvenir shelves. Doctor, Voss near the wall of old photographs, Rhonda behind the register, but none of them were knocking. Then the tapping came again, from inside the walls. Tap, tap, tap. Marcy grabbed the red string and tied one end around the iron gate. "Get everyone into the gift shop," she said to Earl. "Lights on, doors closed, no mirrors." Earl nodded and hurried inside. That left me, Marcy, Ruth, and the boy. Ruth's expression had changed. She no longer looked amused. She looked hungry. Not physically hungry, more like someone watching a door finally unlock after years of waiting. "Why are you here?" Marcy asked her. Ruth adjusted the sleeve of her gray coat. "Same reason as always." "You don't get to take anything." "I don't take," Ruth said. "I return." Marcy spat onto the gravel near Ruth's shoes. Ruth's eyes darkened. For 1 second I thought she might stop looking human, but then she smiled again. "Still angry about your brother?" Marcy went rigid. The boy giggled. Small, bright, cruel. Marcy's hand tightened around the flashlight. "Go inside," she told me. I didn't move. She turned to me. "Now." I went. The moment I stepped through the visitor center door, every light flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Everyone looked at me. Tom immediately started toward me. "What is going on? Why won't our phones turn on? Why is there a child outside?" So they could see him now, or at least Tom could. That felt important. I didn't know why. "I need everyone to stay calm," I said. It was probably the least calming thing I could have said. Elaine laughed through tears. "Stay calm? We need to leave." Earl locked the front door. Tom saw him do it. "You have got to be kidding me." "It's for your safety," Earl said. "You people are insane." Dr. Voss spoke from beside the photo wall. "No, they're informed." His voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. Earl turned slowly. "What did you do, Harlan?" Dr. Voss slipped his notebook into his coat. "Nothing yet." "Yet?" "I came to observe." Ruth's voice came from behind me, though I had not heard the door open. "No, you came to open." Everyone turned. Ruth stood inside now, alone. The boy was not with her. Marcy rushed in behind her and slammed the door. "Where is he?" Earl asked. Ruth looked around the gift shop, smiling at the shelves of polished stones, plastic helmets, and cheap bat keychains. Closer. The lights flickered again. From somewhere in the building came the sound of wet footsteps. Slap, slap, slap. Elaine covered her mouth. Paige whispered, "No, no, no." Nora started crying. Earl moved toward the hallway that led to the bathrooms and employee office. Marcy blocked him. "Don't chase sounds. I'm not letting it into the office. It's already in the office if it wants to be." That sentence did something terrible to the room. It made the building feel fake, thin, like the walls and doors and lights were only pretending to protect us. The wet footsteps stopped. Then my voice came from the hallway. "Earl?" Every person in the room looked at me. I had not spoken. My voice came again from the dark hall. "Earl, I need help." Earl closed his eyes, his face twisted with pain. Marcy whispered, "That's not him." "I know," Earl said, but he sounded like he didn't want to know. My voice continued from the hallway. "I'm stuck. I fell. Please." I hated hearing myself like that, not because it sounded wrong, because it sounded exactly right. Every crack, every breath, every little panic tremor. It was me, begging from a place I had never been. Dr. Voss took one step toward the hall. Marcy pointed the flashlight at his chest. "Do not." He stopped. "You don't understand what this is," he said. "I understand enough." "No, you understand procedure. I understand significance." Earl opened his eyes. "You understand nothing, Doctor." Voss's calm finally cracked. "I have spent 30 years collecting accounts of this place. Missing surveyors in 1891, the school group in 1924, the sealed rescue report from 1938, the Maddox family buying the land after every previous owner died or fled. You know what is beneath that chain, and you've hidden it." "There is nothing beneath the chain that belongs to you," Earl said. Dr. Voss smiled. "There it is." I remembered Rule 10. Never take the tour past the chain marked staff only, even if the lights are on beyond it. "What's past the chain?" I asked. Nobody answered. Then Ruth said, "The rest of the cave." Marcy snapped, "Shut up." But Ruth kept going. "Not the tourist path. Not the pretty little chambers with names for brochures. The real Briar Hollow. The old route. The lower path." Earl's voice dropped. "There is no lower path." Ruth looked delighted. "Still saying it after all these years." Tom shouted, "I don't care about any of this. Open the door." He grabbed Elaine's hand and pulled her toward the front entrance. Earl stepped in front of him. "You cannot leave yet." "Move." "Tom," Elaine whispered, "please." But Tom was done listening. He shoved Earl hard enough that the old man stumbled against a display shelf. A row of polished geodes rattled and fell. Tom reached for the lock. Marcy yelled, "Don't open it!" Too late. Tom unlocked the front door and yanked it open. Fog poured in, not drifted. Poured. Thick white fog rolled across the floor like water, swallowing everyone's shoes. The parking lot beyond the door was gone. The cars were gone. The road was gone. Even the porch light became a dim, floating blur. Tom froze in the doorway. A little boy's voice came from the fog. "Guide?" Except again, it was my voice. Tom stepped back. The fog stopped at the threshold. It did not enter farther. Marcy moved slowly toward the door, holding the tin lantern in one hand. "Close it," she said softly. Tom obeyed. He shut the door and locked it without another word. After that, nobody argued for a while. Earl sank into a chair near the ticket counter. He looked like he might pass out. Rhonda brought him water, but his hands shook too badly to hold the cup. Marcy took control. She moved everyone into the center of the gift shop, away from doors, windows, mirrors, and the hallway. She unplugged a rotating postcard stand because the glossy cards reflected too much. She made Paige turn her phone face down, even though it was dead. She took a small round mirror out of Elaine's purse and put it in the register drawer. Then she gave us the outside rules. There were not 13. There were only 7. Maybe because 7 was all anyone had survived long enough to write down. Rule 1. If something follows a tour out, do not acknowledge it as a person. Rule 2. Do not let it hear you count. Rule 3. Do not allow it to touch water outside the cave. Rule 4. Keep every door either fully open or fully closed. Never leave one halfway. Rule 5. If it uses the voice of someone alive, that person must stay awake. Rule 6. If it knocks 3 times, do not knock back. Rule 7. Before sunrise, the guide must return what followed them out, or the cave will come looking. Nobody spoke after she finished. Then Paige whispered, "Return it where?" Marcy looked at me. I already knew. My stomach dropped. "No," I said. Earl spoke from the chair, voice hoarse. "You have to take him back to the iron gate." "No, not inside," Marcy said quickly. "Just to the gate. The red string marks the boundary. You don't cross it. You don't open the gate. You stand there and tell it the tour is over." I stared at her. "That's it?" "If it listens." "And if it doesn't?" She didn't answer. I laughed once because my mind didn't know what else to do. "You want me to go outside in that fog with that thing using my voice and tell it the tour is over?" Marcy's face softened for the first time that night. "I know it isn't fair. No, it isn't. It never is." The wet footsteps started again, this time above us. Slow, bare feet moving across the ceiling. Slap, slap, slap. Elaine began praying under her breath. Nora held Paige so tightly her knuckles went white. Tom stared at the ceiling, all the anger drained from his face. Dr. Voss looked fascinated. That made me hate him. The footsteps stopped directly above me. Then came the knocking. Tap, tap, tap. Not from outside, not from the hallway, from the ceiling tile over my head. I did not knock back. Nobody did. A damp circle spread across the tile. Water dripped onto the floor in front of me. 1 drop, 2, 3. The ceiling tile sagged. Marcy grabbed my arm. "Now," she said. Earl stood, but Marcy stopped him. "No, he has to do it." "I can go with him," Earl said. "You can stand at the door." Then she turned to me. "I'll go halfway, no farther." That was the first good thing I had heard all night. Marcy handed me the tin lantern. It wasn't lit, but it felt heavy and cold. "Hold this in your left hand," she said. "Why?" "Because if you need your right hand, you'll know." That was not an answer. She opened the front door. The fog waited outside. It had pressed itself against the glass like a living thing. Marcy stepped out first. I followed. The air was freezing. Not Kentucky night cold. Cave cold. The kind of cold that lives in stone and never sees the sun. Behind us, Earl stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame. Rhonda stood behind him. The guests watched from inside. Ruth was near the counter, smiling. Dr. Voss was gone. I noticed too late. "Where's Voss?" I said. Marcy stopped. Earl turned around sharply. Inside, people started looking around. "He was just here," Paige said. "He was beside the postcards," Nora said. Ruth laughed, not loudly, just enough. Earl lunged back inside and grabbed her by the shoulders. "Where is he?" Ruth did not resist. "He went where he came to go," Marcy cursed. "The chain." Earl's face collapsed. All the fear from earlier became something worse, understanding. "He took the staff key," Rhonda said. Her voice was small. Earl patted his pocket. Then his face went blank. The second key ring was gone. For a moment, no one moved. Then from the direction of the cave came a metallic sound. The iron gate opening. A long, low groan rolled through the fog. My knees nearly gave out. Earl pushed past me and ran. Marcy grabbed him, but he tore free. "Earl!" she shouted. He vanished into the white. Marcy looked at me, then at the open visitor center door, then toward the cave. For once, she looked uncertain. The rules had broken into pieces. The thing that followed us out was still loose. The gate had been opened. Dr. Voss had gone back inside, and Earl had followed him. A shape appeared in the fog ahead. Small, still. The boy stood between us and the cave entrance. He held one hand out to me. In his other hand was Dr. Voss's notebook. Water dripped from its pages. He opened his mouth. My voice came out. "Lower path," Marcy whispered. "Don't answer." But something behind the boy moved. A light, not the yellow safety lights. A lantern flame, small and orange, flickering deeper inside the cave. Then another flame appeared beside it. Then another. One by one, lanterns lit themselves in the darkness beyond the iron gate, forming a path downward where no path should have been. A path past the chain. A path that had not existed on any tour map. From somewhere far below, Dr. Voss screamed. Then Earl screamed after him. The boy smiled up at me. And this time, when he spoke with my voice, he said something that was not in the rules. "Tour's not over. Tour's not over." The boy said it in my voice. Not similar to my voice. Not close. Mine. Every word came out with the same shaky breath I had been trying to hide since the moment that lantern lit inside the devil's pantry. Marcy's fingers dug into my arm. "Do not answer him," she whispered. I didn't, but I wanted to. That was the worst part. Something about hearing your own voice from someone else makes your brain stumble. It feels like a command, like a memory, like part of you has already agreed to whatever is being asked. The boy stood in the fog between us and the cave entrance, soaked from head to toe, Dr. Voss's notebook hanging from one small hand. Behind him, past the open iron gate, lanterns glowed one by one in the darkness. They marked a path I had never seen before. A path that sloped down, a path that should not have existed. From somewhere below, Earl screamed again. Then the scream cut off, not faded, cut, like a hand had closed around it. Marcy turned pale. "Earl," she breathed. The boy looked at her. Then he lifted the notebook and held it out to me. I shook my head. The boy smiled. The notebook dropped from his hand and slapped onto the wet gravel. It opened by itself. Pages fluttered in the cold air until they stopped on one entry. I didn't want to read it. But the lantern light from the cave shone across the page, and my eyes went there anyway. Most of the writing had smeared from water, but a few lines were still visible. Briar Hollow is not a cave system. It is a mouth. The rules are not meant to keep people safe. The rules are meant to keep it fed slowly. My stomach turned. Marcy saw the page and snatched the notebook off the ground. "Don't read his garbage." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Nothing useful." Marcy. She looked toward the cave. The lanterns were still burning. The lower path waited. Inside the visitor center, someone started sobbing. I could hear Elaine praying through the open door. Tom was shouting for Dr. Voss. Ruth was laughing softly to herself. And under all of it, from inside the cave, I heard a sound like water running over stone. Except it wasn't water. It was whispering. Hundreds of voices, all speaking at once. Marcy gripped the notebook so hard the paper bent. "There was a collapse in 1938, she said. "That's what Earl tells people. A bad one. Sealed half the system. Killed a rescue crew. After that, his father bought the land and closed the lower route." "That's the public version?" "That's the safe version. And the real one?" Her eyes stayed on the cave. "The real one is that the lower path doesn't stay in the same place. It opens when it wants something. It opened for miners before the caverns were a tourist attraction. It opened for surveyors. It opened for kids from a school group. It opened for Earl's father." I looked at the boy. He was still watching me. "The child?" I asked. Marcy's jaw tightened. His name was Samuel Maddox. Earl's family. The old photograph flashed in my mind. The little boy at the back of the group turned away from the camera, staring into the cave. "Earl's brother?" I asked. Marcy nodded once. "Earl was 12, Samuel was 9. Their father brought them down here before the lower path was sealed. Samuel heard someone calling from below. Earl followed him. Only Earl came back." The boy's smile faded. For the first time, he looked like a child, lost, cold, angry. "Then why is he doing this?" I whispered. Marcy swallowed. "Because whatever came back wearing Samuel has had a long time to learn him." That sentence landed like ice in my chest. The boy wasn't Samuel. Not really. Maybe part of him was. Maybe just enough to make Earl hesitate. Enough to make Marcy's voice break when she said his name. Enough to make the rules necessary. The fog thickened around us. The boy raised one pale hand and pointed at me. Then he pointed into the cave. guide. He didn't say it that time. He didn't have to. Marcy shoved the tin lantern into my hand again. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "If we go in, we do not follow the lanterns unless there is no other choice. We do not say Earl's name once we cross the gate. We do not say Voss's name. We do not say Samuel's name. Names give things a direction." "Then what do we call them?" "We don't." I stared at her. "You said, 'If we go in.'" Marcy looked toward the visitor center. Through the window, I saw Ruth standing alone near the counter, watching us like she was enjoying a play. "If we don't," Marcy said, "the lower path stays open. By sunrise, it won't just be the cave. It'll be the building, then the parking lot, then the road. That's impossible." So was a dead child walking out of the iron gate. I had no answer for that. Marcy pulled a second flashlight from her bag and handed it to me. "You stay behind me. You hold the lantern. You do not let it go out. It isn't lit. It will be." The boy giggled. A small orange flame appeared inside the lantern glass. I almost dropped it. Marcy didn't react. She only stepped toward the iron gate. The red string she had tied earlier stretched from the bars to the visitor center door. It should have been a simple length of string. Thin, fragile, something a child could snap. But the fog curled around it and did not cross. The boy stood just beyond it, waiting. Marcy looked back at the visitor center and shouted, "Rhonda, shut the door and do not open it unless you hear me knock twice." Rhonda shouted back, "Twice! Not 3! Twice!" The door closed. The click of the lock sounded final. Marcy and I walked toward the gate. The boy stepped aside, not politely, expectantly, like a host welcoming us in. The iron gate hung open. Beyond it, the entry tunnel had changed. It was still the same cave mouth, same stone, same damp air. But the safety lights were gone. The metal railings had vanished into shadow. The normal tour path looked narrower, older, less maintained, like we had stepped backward in time to before tickets, brochures, and gift shop keychains. Marcy crossed the threshold first. I followed. The moment I passed through the gate, the fog behind me disappeared. The night vanished. There was only cave. The gate slammed shut by itself. I spun around. The bars were there, but beyond them, I couldn't see the parking lot. I couldn't see the visitor center. I couldn't see Rhonda or the guests or the road. Only more cave. A passage stretched behind the gate where the outside world should have been. My breathing quickened. Marcy grabbed my shoulder. "Do not panic. Outside is gone. No, we are turned around." "What does that mean?" "It means don't trust directions." The boy appeared on the other side of the gate, inside the impossible passage. He put one finger to his lips. "Shh." Then he walked backward into the dark. The lantern in my hand burned brighter. Marcy looked at it and cursed. "It wants you to lead." "I don't know the way." "It doesn't care." A scream rose from somewhere below. Not Earl's this time. Dr. Voss. He was screaming words, not just fear, words. "I found it, I found the chamber." His voice echoed up through the stone. Then another voice answered him. Also, Dr. Voss, but deeper, older, happier. "I found it." Marcy pointed down the main passage. "Move." We moved fast, past the welcome chamber, past the first set of railings, which now looked rusted and ancient, past Bridal Veil Falls, except the water there had stopped falling. It hung in the air like glass threads, motionless, catching the lantern light. I stared at it too long. Inside the frozen water, I saw faces, not clear faces, suggestions of faces, pressed from the other side. Marcy slapped the back of my shoulder. Eyes forward. We reached Needle Pass. The walls seemed closer than before. The passage was breathing. That is the only way I can describe it. The stone did not move exactly, but the darkness between the walls pulsed in and out, slow and patient. From deep in the passage came 3 soft notes. A whistle. Marcy did not stop. Do not whistle back. I wasn't going to. You might. That scared me because she was right. The melody was simple, but it hooked into my thoughts. 3 notes, then silence. 3 notes, then silence. After a while, my tongue wanted to shape them. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. We squeezed through Needle Pass sideways. Halfway through, a voice whispered directly behind my ear. Guide? I kept moving. Another voice, this one Elaine's, sobbed from inside the wall. Please don't leave me. I kept moving. Then my mother's voice whispered from ahead. I froze. She said my name, my real name, softly, like she used to when waking me up for school. Marcy turned back immediately. Don't. My knees felt weak. My mother isn't here, I whispered. No. She doesn't know this place. No. The voice came again, closer. Honey, help me. I closed my eyes. For a second, I smelled her perfume. Clean laundry. Vanilla. The house I grew up in. My throat closed. Marcy's voice cut through it. That thing has never met anyone's mother. It just knows what doors hurt most. The smell vanished. The voice became a low, wet laugh inside the wall. I forced myself forward. When we stumbled out into Cathedral Chamber, the entire cavern was dark except for my lantern. The ceiling above us was gone. Not hidden in darkness, gone. Where rock should have been, there was a black emptiness filled with tiny distant lights. Stars. I stared upward, unable to stop myself. The stars blinked, not like stars, like eyes. Marcy grabbed my chin and forced my head down. What did I say? Eyes forward. In the far left corner, the alcove waited, the one Elaine had almost walked into. This time, someone stood there. A man. Tall. Thin. Silver hair combed back. Earl. He stood facing the corner, one hand pressed against the stone. Don't say his name, Marcy whispered. Is it him? I don't know. The man turned his head slightly. Marcy? He called. She went still. His voice was Earl's, but that meant nothing anymore. Marcy, I found him, he said. The boy appeared beside him in the alcove. Wet hair, bare feet, old clothes. He took Earl's hand. This time, Earl began to cry. Marcy's breathing changed. I could hear it, shallow, broken. Don't go over there, I whispered. She didn't move. The man in the alcove turned more fully. His face was wrong, not obviously at first, but something about it had been arranged by memory instead of bone. Earl's features were there, but softened, blurred, almost copied from a photograph. Marcy, he said, I can fix it. The boy looked at her. Then he spoke in a voice I hadn't heard before, a young man's voice. Mars? She made a sound like she had been punched. I understood then. Her brother, the one Ruth had mentioned. The cave had him too. Marcy took one step toward the alcove. I grabbed her wrist. She nearly swung the flashlight at me. Don't, I said. Her eyes were wet and furious. You don't know what you're stopping me from. Yes, I do. No, you don't. I tightened my grip. If that was him, he wouldn't be using this place to reach you. For a moment, I thought she would hit me. Then the voice from the alcove changed. It deepened, stretched, became too many voices layered together. Let her come." The fake Earl smiled too widely. The boy's mouth opened in the same smile. The entire alcove seemed to lean forward. Marcy yanked herself back. The smile vanished. A crack split down the fake Earl's face from forehead to chin. Underneath was darkness, not shadow, depth, a hole shaped like a man. Marcy raised the flashlight and shone it directly into the alcove. The thing shrieked. The sound tore through Cathedral Chamber, and stones rained from the invisible ceiling. "Run," Marcy said. We ran. The normal route to the Devil's Pantry should have been on the right, but the path had changed. The lanterns led left, down a set of stone steps that had not been there before. At the top of the steps hung a rusted chain. Staff only. Rule 10. Never take the tour past the chain marked staff only, even if the lights are on beyond it. The lights were on beyond it. Lanterns lined the walls, burning with steady orange flames. Below, Dr. Voss was laughing. "I knew it," he shouted from somewhere deep in the lower path. "I knew it was real." Marcy stopped at the chain. Her face was gray. "We don't cross," she said. Another scream came from below. This one was Earl. Real or not, I couldn't tell. Marcy flinched. The boy appeared at the bottom of the first few steps. He looked up at me, not at Marcy. Me. Then he pointed behind us. I turned. The darkness in Cathedral Chamber was moving. The fake Earl was crawling out of the alcove. Not walking, crawling. Its limbs were too long now, bending in too many places, its cracked face hanging open like a broken mask. Behind it, other shapes pressed out of the stone. Hands, faces, shoulders. Things that had learned pieces of people, but never the whole shape. Marcy looked at the chain, then at the crawling darkness. "There is no other choice," she said. We crossed. The moment we stepped over the chain, the tour route disappeared behind us. The lower path swallowed the world. The air changed first. It became warm, wet, thick. The walls were no longer the pale limestone of the tourist caverns. They were darker, almost red in the lantern light, slick with mineral deposits that looked disturbingly like veins. The floor sloped sharply down, and water ran along both sides of the path in shallow channels. At first, it flowed downward. Then it stopped. Then it began moving uphill. Rule 12. If the group sees water running uphill, leave by the emergency passage and do not look back. But there was no emergency passage. There was only the lower path. Marcy saw the water too. "Don't look at it," she said. That was impossible. It made no sound as it climbed. It slid uphill in smooth black ribbons, carrying tiny fragments in it. Pebbles, dirt, something pale and thin like fingernails. We kept walking. The lantern in my hand grew hotter. The flame leaned forward, pointing down the path, like a compass. The walls began to show carvings. At first I thought they were scratches from old tools. Survey marks, maybe. But then I saw they were names, hundreds of names, some carved cleanly, some scratched desperately, some so old the edges had softened. I recognized none of them until Marcy stopped beside one. Her hand rose toward the wall, but did not touch it. There, scratched into the stone, was one name: Daniel Pike, Marcy's brother. She closed her eyes. The cave whispered around us. "Marcia," she stepped back. "No," she said. The whisper came again. "Cold, Marcia. No, dark. No, left me." Marcy's face crumpled. "I looked for you," she whispered. The wall split open around the carved name. A hand reached through. Human fingers, dirty nails, a wrist in a torn flannel sleeve. Marcy made a broken sound. I grabbed her and pulled. The hand snapped at the air where she had been. The wall sealed again. The name remained, but beneath it, fresh letters scratched themselves into the stone. Marcy Pike. She stared at it. Then she looked at me. Now it knows I'm here. Before I could answer, a voice called from below. Help! Dr. Voss. We found him in a chamber shaped like a bowl. The path opened suddenly onto a wide circular space where dozens of lanterns hung from iron hooks in the walls. In the center of the chamber was a pool of black water, perfectly still despite the uphill streams feeding into it. Earl knelt at the edge of the pool. His arms were submerged to the elbows. Dr. Voss stood behind him, holding the staff key ring in one hand and his notebook in the other. His face was covered in dirt. His glasses were cracked, but his eyes shone with feverish excitement. He turned when he saw us. You shouldn't have come, he said. Marcy raised the flashlight. Step away from him. Dr. Voss smiled. You still think this is a haunting? Earl did not look back. He stared into the black pool, whispering something I couldn't hear. What did you do? Marcy asked. I opened the lower path. Why? Because everyone who runs this place has lied about what it is. It kills people. Dr. Voss shook his head. No, it preserves them. It records them. Every voice, every memory, every fear, every name. This is not evil. It is ancient. Something moved under the pool. Earl's shoulders shook. Dr. Voss continued, louder now. Do you understand what that means? Death is not the end here. This place keeps people. It keeps proof. Marcy's voice went flat. It keeps bait. That finally made Dr. Voss pause. The pool rippled. Earl whispered, I'm sorry. Don't say that down here, Marcy said. Earl looked back at us. His face was destroyed by grief. He's still in there. The boy stood on the far side of the pool. Samuel, or the thing wearing him. Earl reached toward him with one wet hand. Sam. The entire chamber inhaled. I felt it. The walls pulled air from my lungs. Marcy shouted, No! Too late. Earl had said the name underground. The black pool erupted. Hands burst from the water. Not dozens, hundreds. White hands, gray hands, child hands, work-worn hands, hands missing fingers, hands wearing rings, hands with old mud packed beneath the nails. They grabbed Earl's arms. He screamed as they pulled. Marcy lunged forward, but I caught her around the waist. She fought me. We can't leave him. He said the name. I don't care. Earl looked at her. For 1 second, the fear left his face. Don't, he said. Then he looked at me. His eyes were clear. You're the guide now. The hands pulled him into the pool. He vanished without a splash. The water became still again. Marcy stopped fighting. Her body went slack against me. Across the chamber, Dr. Voss stared at the pool, horrified at last. No, he whispered. No, that's not... The boy appeared behind him. Dr. Voss did not see. I did. The boy reached up and placed one wet hand against the back of Dr. Voss's coat. Dr. Voss stiffened. His mouth opened. When he spoke, every voice in the chamber spoke with him. Guide. I backed away. Marcy slowly stood on her own. The lantern in my hand flared bright. The flame burned blue for 1 second, then orange again. The boy pointed at the pool, then at me. I understood. That was where I was supposed to return him. Not the iron gate, not the cave entrance. The pool. The place the lower path fed. The place that had been collecting people for generations. No, I whispered. The boy's face changed. The The childlike sadness disappeared. The thing underneath looked out through his eyes. It was old, not hundreds of years old, older than the roads above us, older than the towns, older than the names scratched in the wall. It did not hate me. That was worse. It was simply hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. Marcy whispered, "The rule said the guide must return what followed them out." "To the pool? I think so. What happens to me?" She did not answer. Dr. Voss suddenly began walking toward the water. His steps were jerky, like something was pulling him by strings. He dropped the notebook, dropped the keys. Then he turned his head toward me and smiled with the boy's mouth. "Tour's not over." My voice came from his throat. That was when I remembered Rule 8. During the darkness demonstration, keep your eyes closed. It had bothered me from the beginning. Why close your eyes in the dark? You couldn't see anything anyway. Unless the point was never what you could see. Unless the point was what could see through you. The lower path used attention. Counting it gave it space. Naming it gave it direction. Looking gave it shape. Answering gave it permission. And guiding it gave it a way out. I looked at the lanterns lining the chamber. Every flame leaned toward me, waiting. I was the guide. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I began the tour speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice shaking, "this concludes your tour of Briar Hollow Caverns." Marcy turned to me. The boy went still. Dr. Voss stopped at the pool's edge. I kept going. "Please remain with your group. Do not cross any chains or railings. Do not touch the formations. Do not wander from the marked path." The chamber listened. I could feel it listening. The hands beneath the pool pressed against the surface from below. "The exit is behind us," I said. That was a lie. But tours are full of lies. Pretty names for ugly rocks. Safe stories for dangerous places. Light poured over darkness and called education. I raised the tin lantern. "And all guests must return the way they came." The boy's face twisted. Not fear, anger. The cave rumbled. Marcy whispered, "Keep talking." I stepped backward from the pool. "The tour is over," I said again, stronger this time. "All guests must return the way they came." The lanterns on the wall flickered. One went out, then another. The boy opened his mouth. My mother's voice came out. "Please don't leave me." I closed my eyes. "The tour is over." Daniel's voice came next. "Mars, help me." Marcy sobbed once but did not answer. "The tour is over," she said, with me. Earl's voice came from the pool. "Open the gate." I kept my eyes closed. "The tour is over." Then the cave used my own voice. Not from the boy, not from Dr. Voss, from everywhere. "You don't want to die down here." And that was true. I didn't. I wanted morning. I wanted the visitor center lights. I wanted to quit. I wanted to drive as far from Kentucky as my car could take me. But wanting did not matter. Rules did. So I said, one final time, "The tour is over. Return to your place." The lantern in my hand went out. Total darkness swallowed everything. I kept my eyes closed. Something screamed. Not like a person, like stone cracking under pressure. Wind slammed into me from every direction. Cold water sprayed my face. Hands brushed my jacket, my neck, my hair. Voices begged, laughed, cursed, and whispered names I had never heard. One voice, a child's voice, whispered directly in front of me. "Guide?" I did not answer. A small, wet hand slipped into mine. Every instinct in my body told me to pull away. I didn't, because suddenly I understood. Returning him didn't mean throwing him into the pool. It meant guiding him back, not the thing, the child. Whatever small piece of Samuel Maddox was still trapped beneath all that hunger. I kept my eyes closed and held his hand. It was freezing. I said, "Stay with the group." The screaming stopped. The hand tightened. Then the world tilted. I felt myself walking, though I couldn't feel the floor. Marcy was beside me. I could hear her breathing. Something dragged behind us. Maybe Dr. Voss. Maybe the notebook. Maybe the entire lower path trying to follow. The boy's hand led me and followed me at the same time. Down became up. Forward became back. The smell of cave water became fresh rain. The whispers thinned. Then, far away, I heard knocking. 2 knocks, not 3. Tap, tap, Marcy gasped. "Rhonda." I opened my eyes. We were standing inside the iron gate, the real one, the tourist entrance. The safety lights were back on, glowing weak yellow along the walls. The gate was closed. Beyond it stood Rhonda, Tom, Elaine, Paige, Nora, and Ruth. No fog, no lower path, no Dr. Voss, no Earl, and no boy. My hand was empty. Rhonda unlocked the gate. Marcy and I stumbled out. The moment we crossed the threshold, the gate slammed shut behind us so hard the bars rang. Everyone started talking at once. Elaine cried. Tom backed away from us like we were contagious. Paige threw up near the gravel. Nora asked where Dr. Voss was. Rhonda asked where Earl was. Ruth only watched me. Marcy sank to her knees on the ground. I turned back toward the gate. Inside the cave, just beyond the first safety light, the boy stood alone. For the first time, he looked dry. His hair was neatly combed. His old clothes were clean. He looked less like a drowned thing and more like the child from the photograph. Samuel Maddox raised one hand, not a warning this time, a goodbye. Then the safety light flickered. He was gone. Sunrise came 30 minutes later. Nobody spoke much while we waited. When the first pale light touched the hills, everyone's phones turned back on at the same time. Tom called the police. Paige called her father. Nora sat with Elaine and stared at the cave entrance. Ruth disappeared before anyone noticed her leaving. I told the police that Dr. Voss had gone off the marked path and Earl had followed to bring him back. That was what Marcy told me to say. That was what Rhonda said too. The official search lasted 3 days. They found nothing. No lower path, no pool, no lanterns, no bodies, not even Dr. Voss's notebook. The staff keyring was found sitting on Earl's desk, dry and polished clean. A week later, Earl Maddox's photo appeared on the wall of the visitor center. Rhonda put it there. She placed it beside the old black and white photograph of the 1940s tour group, the one with Samuel standing in the back, turned toward the cave. Except Samuel wasn't turned away anymore. In the photo, he now faced the camera, smiling. Earl stood beside him, one hand on his little brother's shoulder. I quit, obviously. At least, I tried to. I handed my resignation to Rhonda the morning after the search ended. She read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it under the register. Then she said, "Marcy quit twice." I looked at Marcy. She was restocking plastic helmets without looking at me. "3 times, she said. Rhonda shrugged. 3. "I'm not coming back," I said. Neither of them answered. That should have comforted me. It didn't. For 2 weeks, I stayed away from Briar Hollow Caverns. I didn't answer calls from Rhonda. I didn't answer texts from Marcy. I slept with every light on. I taped towels over the mirrors in my apartment. I poured salt across my windowsills because I hated myself just enough to do it. Every night at 10:13, I woke up. Every night, I heard 3 soft knocks from somewhere in my apartment. Tap, tap, tap. I never knocked back. On the 15th day, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a laminated sheet. Not the old rules. A new one. Briar Hollow Late Tour. Rules for head guide use only. My name was typed at the bottom. I drove back that afternoon. I don't know why, that's a lie. I know exactly why. Because when I tried to throw the rules away, the trash can filled with black water. Because when I tried to burn them, the smoke smelled like wet limestone. Because when I looked in my bathroom mirror by accident, I saw the lower path behind me. And because, written in fresh ink beneath the 13 rules, there was one new line. Rule 14. If the boy waves goodbye, the cave has accepted the trade. Rhonda was waiting for me at the ticket counter. Marcy stood near the entrance with a tour helmet in her hands. Neither looked surprised. I asked the only question that mattered. What trade? Rhonda looked toward Earl's photo. Marcy looked toward the iron gate. Then, from deep inside Briar Hollow Caverns, a child laughed. Not cruelly, not happily, just once, like a secret being kept. Rhonda slid a name badge across the counter. It had my name on it. Underneath, in small black letters, were the words, Head Guide. I still work at Briar Hollow Caverns. I lead the public tours. I tell families about limestone and mineral deposits and underground rivers. I make jokes in the organ room. I warn children not to touch the formations. I turn off the lights for the darkness demonstration. And yes, I keep my eyes closed. Most tours are normal. Most people leave with postcards, polished rocks, and blurry photos of stalactites. But once a month, Earl's old office phone rings after closing. There is no caller ID. Rhonda answers it. She writes down a name. Then she looks at me, and I get the laminated rule sheet from the drawer. I count the guests before entering. I count them after the iron gate. I do not let anyone whistle in Needle Pass. I do not let anyone stand in the far left corner of Cathedral Chamber. I do not respond when something uses my voice. I never take the tour past the staff-only chain. And no matter what I hear from the dark, I do not say anyone's name underground. Last night, I led my first late tour alone. There were 5 guests when we entered. There were 5 after the iron gate. There were 5 in Cathedral Chamber. But when we reached the Devil's Pantry, one of the decorative lanterns was lit. So I turned the group around, just like the rules say. Nobody argued except one woman in a gray coat standing at the back. She smiled at me and said, "You're getting better, Ruth." I counted the group again. 5 guests, 1 guide. And in the shadows behind Ruth, a little boy watched me. Dry hair, clean clothes, one hand raised to his lips. Shh. We made it back before 10:13. This time, I did not open the gate right away. I waited. I counted. I listened. And from somewhere beyond the bars, in a voice that sounded almost like Earl Maddox, someone whispered, "Good guide." That was when I understood the real rule of Briar Hollow. The cave doesn't need every guest. It only needs enough, and the guide's job was never to save everyone. It was to know which rules could be broken and which people could not be brought back.